Hey folks, how's it going? It's me, Navwalia, and welcome to another episode of Quarter Life Chit Chat. You know what day it is? It's Thursday, and with that comes me sliding into your DMs with another episode. But not just any episode, this episode is a bit special, but I'll get into that a bit later on. First off, I want to thank everyone for streaming episode 10. It was by far my most proud episode as I, in typical Quarter Life Chit Chat fashion, shared a very funny story of me burning my butt cheeks as a 7-year-old kid by sitting in a hot bowl of curry. But I also had a lovely and in-depth conversation with my friend Nell regarding the topic of women being heavily sexualized and objectified in society. I took away a lot of things from that episode. I always knew that women being sexualized and objectified is an issue and has been. I, as a guy, never understood how common it is and how deep-rooted it is. And to quote my friend, women being sexualized and objectified is just so common that a lot of girls just accept it. That is reality, and that breaks my heart. That sucks. But a lot of you listeners have messaged me on Instagram, messaged me on my phone, Facebook, and even Twitter, telling me how much you appreciated me covering such a controversial episode and how a lot of you, like me, took very important things away from it. A lot of my female listeners messaged me, thanking me for covering such a serious topic, and I'm very happy that I finally found and I finally achieved the vision I always have for this show, which is, sharing funny stories, sharing crazy stories, but also having real conversations that are impacting a lot of young adults. And I achieved that with episode 10, and that inspired me to think, well, can I go 2 for 2? Which brings me to this episode 11. This episode is a bit special one. For starters, if I pulled it off just right, this is the first video episode of my show. That's right, folks. I have officially learned how to edit a video and make it look cool. Thank you so much. And I just want to say, those claps that y'all just heard weren't artificially added. No. Those claps are recorded from real people that clap for me when I officially lost 2 pounds. True story. I'm not joking. But man, I've been struggling so much creating the thumbnails for all the episodes to upload on YouTube. This is hard. And the fact that I somehow have managed to edit a whole video podcast, and honestly, this is peak life. Okay. And you know what that means? It's all downhill from here. Yep, that's exactly right. It's all downhill from here. But another reason that this episode is very important is it is inspired by 2 events. First off, I had a lovely conversation with my best friend Taylor regarding the vision of my show and where I see it heading. And I was asking him what's his favorite episode, and he said that his favorite episode on the show so far is episode 3, Quarter Life Crisis. If you missed that episode, I discussed my struggles with seeing other people achieve their career goals or move on with their life, where I felt stagnant in mine, and how I was struggling to get into med school and seeing other people achieve the dreams that I have and constantly comparing myself and ruining my own happiness. He really enjoyed that episode, and he mentioned to me that it is valuable to be vulnerable and create conversations and create space that allows people to learn or allow people to be vulnerable. And the second event that inspired this episode is June 13 was the official Men's Mental Health Awareness Day. I wanted to make an episode slightly around that topic, but I hadn't had all my bearings straight, and I didn't have a proper idea of how to execute it until now. Which brings me to the topic of this conversation, of this episode, which is dealing with men and the image that men have in the realm of mental health. I want to start this episode off with a story. 2 years ago, maybe 3 now, I had a friend named Catherine, and we were good friends for quite a while. One time we had a really big fight. It was pretty much in tune with why she acts very closed off with me, and upon having a fairly heated conversation, she revealed to me that she finds me very intimidating. I was really taken aback with that because if you've never met me, I basically look like a tanned watermelon. Like, I legitimately look like the poster child of roly poly, okay? I do not think I'm intimidating at all. So I was really taken aback with it. She mentioned to me that the reason she's intimidated by me is because I am so open about talking about my feelings and I am emotionally available. But more importantly, I can talk about emotions and feelings with a lot of ease. I asked, why is that weird? And she said, and I quote, most men don't do that, dude. It's fucking weird. You're weird. And I was like, huh, very interesting. So I started a bunch of my guys' friends, and they're like, dude, not a lot of guys ever talk about their feelings. And that I am one of the anomalies that openly talks about my feelings, other people's feelings, and ready to hash anything up at any moment. And I was like, okay, that's a little weird. And I started having a lot of conversation over the past year, and I'm beginning to notice a pattern, which brings me to this episode. The pattern's revolving around pressures among men in current society, one of which being that men are supposed to be unemotional and strong. See, the reason Catherine was upset and intimidated by me is not because I was very abrasive or anything. It is that a lot of guys are just not emotionally available or talk about their feelings at all. So when someone like me does, it comes off as very, whoa, this is very strange and very new. I'm sure a lot of guys hearing this episode can relate that we're kind of doctrined to not discuss a lot about feelings. We're doctrined to men don't cry, be tough, and all that jazz. But it's so outdated. It is these social pressures of men not being emotional, not showing an emotional side, where we are continuously in this loop that we solidify this pressure while hating this pressure, right? And what I mean by that, it brings me to another story. So, a couple of years ago in university, I had a friend named Shantella, and she was telling me how she went on a date, and she was telling me how her date was very open about the struggles he had in his life and how he overcame them and learned a lot of things. I'm sure a lot of you listening are like, okay, that sounds like a great date. That is exactly what I said. And she goes, no, Nav, it wasn't a great date. It's kind of a fucking red flag. And I said, okay, well, why is it a red flag? And she's like, men are supposed to be tough. And he's like talking about like anxiety and like how stressed he gets and how he had therapy to sort his issues. Like, that's kind of fucking weird. And I was like, bro, this can't be real, right? And believe it or not, folks, a month later, she comes back telling me how there's no good men to date. And I was like, well, why do you mean by that? And she's like, every guy is just like very like only wants to have a small talk, and like when I express my emotions or anything, he just like kind of just nods and doesn't accept it. And I was like, a month ago you told me that you don't want men, or you don't want your boyfriend to open up about his feelings, and now you're saying that you want somebody that is emotionally available. And she said, yeah, well, I want a guy that opens up, but I also want like a strong dude. And then she said this saying that really pisses me off. And she goes, like, men are not supposed to talk about feelings, Nav. Like, men used to go to war. And it's like, okay, bro, let's talk about that. See, men that went to war came back with PTSD. A lot of men that went to war died, and a lot of men that came back killed themselves. Because they weren't allowed to talk about their feelings. They weren't allowed to be emotional because of societal pressure. And it is this notion that men are supposed to be strong we always equate to physical strength. Like how many bench presses you can do or how strong you are, but that's not it. Emotional strength, folks, is also very important. And emotional strength isn't, I have no stress in my life. No. Emotional strength is also creating boundaries, being open to displaying emotions and being open to talk about emotions. The notion as a guy that I've noticed, and upon talking to a lot of my guy friends I have seen, is that the notion is, oh, you're a guy, you have it easier. Or you're a guy, you bring an issue up with your friends or whoever, and they're like, dude, it ain't that big of a deal. Or, bro, it ain't that deep. Or the one that I really hate is, you're being kind of a girl right now. And to me, that is really fucking stupid, right? But it is this notion that men are not supposed to be emotional that allows other parties, often other men, to be, it ain't that deep, bro. It ain't like that, bro. Bro, you're being too much of a girl right now discussing feelings. So, what that happens is, just like how it happened to a lot of the dates that my friend Shantilla went on, which is guys stop talking about what pisses them off and what doesn't piss them off because they think that that's what people want, right? We think that oh, like a girl doesn't want to hear about like me having health anxiety, so I'm not going to open up. I'm not going to be a pussy about it. And next thing you know, the notion is men don't show the emotional side. And we give into this self-fulfilling prophecy. And if you don't know what self-fulfilling prophecy is, it pretty much means when you try to avoid something and the thing that you're trying to avoid, the avoidance of that thing allows the issue that you're trying to avoid to become true. For example, if you don't want to go to the doctor because you think, if I go to the doctor, he's going to tell me I have cancer. So you avoid going to the doctor, you keep feeling shitty, and the day you go, the doc tells you you have cancer. And you go, well, see, I fucking knew it. I knew I shouldn't have done that. But what happened? If you went sooner, your cancer either may not have progressed or it may have been caught sooner. It is our avoidance of something that solidifies the thing we're avoiding. And in this situation, in this case, it is guys thinking that they're not supposed to be open what they like, what they dislike, what pisses them off, what not pisses them off, what others think, allows the notion that men are supposed to be unemotional to be solidified. And then it circles back into other people believing, well, men are not supposed, like, no guy opens about feelings. And then that trickles down into you, either getting to know people or whatever, and sitting there and going, well, I can't talk about this because then I'll seem weak. And now you're pissed off. And you create this cycle. And upon talking to a lot of people, a lot of friends, colleagues, co-workers, classmates, family members, this is the pattern that I've been noticing. And I was like, hey, you know what? It is very important to talk about it. Because just like how women being overly sexualized and objectified in society is a very controversial one, men being emotional and showing their emotional side is also just as controversial. Leading into the next segment, which is the mental health and the importance of mental health among men. See, a lot of guys, we try to be strong. We're told, since upbringing that we're not supposed to cry, supposed to be tough, all that jazz. That when we're stressed out or when we're pissed off and when we have too much on a plate, we don't discuss it because that would entail talking about feelings and talking about stress, and we don't talk about it. And whenever I talk to a few of my friends or co-workers, colleagues, the notion I see is, yeah, man, like I'm kind of stressed out, but oh well, it is what it is. Yeah, man, I'm fucked up. I haven't slept enough, but it is what it is. No, it is not what it is. Okay? Stress is like having 100 tabs on your browser open all at once. It's slowing down your computer and you're not closing the tabs. That is what guys are doing when they're stressed out. They have 100 tabs open and they're not dealing with it and they're accepting and they're doing the it is what it is. And that's a piss off, okay? The issue with it is what it is we are dealing with so much on our plate, then the next thing that comes our way, because that's life, we are immediately overwhelmed. And what do we do when we're overwhelmed and we can't discuss it? Either A, we shut down, or B, we avoid things, right? So, let me give you a personal anecdote. A couple months ago, I read this book called Meditation by Marcus Aurelius. And within that book, I learned a lot of great things. I highly recommend it to everybody. It brought me a lot of mental peace. It brought me a new perspective to look at life and take any situations with people and even myself. One of the things Marcus Aurelius says, that the most important thing we have in the world is reason, right? And it is the reason that allows us to deal and accept things the way they are. And he also says that your energy is only finite. There's only so much of it. And when you give your energy to a lot of things, you're expanding yourself too thin and too far. So you have to pull back a little. Now, it is important that you don't pull back a lot. I noticed what I took away is that depth, but I dialed it to 1,000,000. I realized within myself that I stopped caring about a lot of things. I stopped caring about like seeing friends. I stopped caring about the way I talked to my friends. I stopped caring about the way I thought about people. And all it did is it created this little notion in my mind, which expanded and expanded, which anything that came my way, whether it was a small inconvenience to something major, I always was like, whatever, I don't give a shit, I don't really care. And it wasn't until my friend Taylor that pointed it out. And I looked within and I realized that what I was doing is I had a lot of stress in my life, which was med school, not getting a med school, not getting a good career, societal pressure, family pressure, all that jazz. And what I did from it is my plate was full. I didn't talk about my stress because I always had the notion that everything is good. Stresses happen, that's life. But the next thing came, I just didn't care. I avoided it and I pushed it off. I was calmer, but that over time became into a huge issue where I was just not caring about a lot of things. Now you might be wondering, well, now that sounds like depression. No, I was not depressed. I was perfectly ecstatic, but I was just not doing things that were important, and I lost the value of importance of a lot of things. The reason I share the anecdote is because when guys, and I've seen this in a lot of guys, is when we're stressed out, we accept the notion of it is what it is, and we just say, it is what it is. Another stress comes, whatever. We just don't care. We stop caring, whatever, I don't give a shit about that. Oh, that guy's pissed at me, I don't really care. Oh, my girlfriend's mad at me, whatever, I don't give a shit. It's minor. But over time, this I don't give a shit, it's minor, you start doing it with things that are major. And what happens when you care very little about things that should really matter? You lose value. And that's a big issue, and I have seen it with a lot of guys, a lot of my guy friends. I tell ya, check on your friends, see this pattern among them, and if they are doing this, where they're using the words, whatever, I don't really care, it is what it is, or whatever, whenever you talk about a stressor, it is them being avoidant. And that in itself is them feeding into the cycle of men are not supposed to be emotional, we're supposed to be strong, we're not supposed to talk about things, it is what it is. And they continue to be stressed out all the time, not being able to deal with it, resulting in them not caring about shit that is important. And that brings me to the other segment, which is how do we break the stigma, right? Because when I made episode 10, I called up my friend Jessica and we were discussing it, and I was telling her, I was like, hey, I just didn't know that like women are just so often objectified and sexualized that it's just this common. And she said, well, Nav, like it happens when you're 13, 14, 15, 16, and you bring it up and it pisses you off and you bring it up again and you go again. And she's like, eventually you stop bringing it up because you think you're just being a bitch by constantly bringing shit up, right? So you stop caring. It is that notion, and I realized from that notion that when girls, when they're being objective and sexualized, and eventually they had so much they just stop bringing it up, they feed into solidification of that cycle that allows the cycle to continue, right? Eventually you're just like, I'm just accepting it is what it is. Yeah, it brings you eternal peace. It brings you calmness because you're not constantly fighting. But in a way, it doesn't help break the cycle. Just like with men, when we're constantly doing that, it is what it is, I don't really give a shit. Or like, oh bro, I'm a guy, I'm not gonna talk about my feelings on a date or with a girl or whatever. You accept it. It comes, because you're not constantly fighting, right? Like, if you're constantly bringing it up and you're getting shut down or whatever, you don't have to get rejected no further. That is true. But what happens? You don't break the cycle. It continues. And now, next thing you know, the same friend who told you, bro, you're being a girl, don't bring up this issue, is not doing it to other friend because you yourself didn't fight back. That issue, that notion is solidified, and it now carries over to a different guy. So, how do we break the cycle, right? Now, I talk about my feelings a lot. I'm very open about it. I think life is too short to harbor shit in. Let it out. And what are friends for if they can't hear you talk about how XYZ has pissed you off? Or in my case, what are friends for if I'm not being overly dramatic and them listening to me? So, I just want to say, the whole notion that people have, like talking about your feelings requires you sit down on a couch with somebody staring dead at you in your eyes and you being open up. No, it's not like that. Talk about feelings is literally just sitting down with your boys and just talking about what pissed you off while playing a game. It's just that simple. Just tell people what pissed you off in a day, what you don't like. Just share about your day. Do it while cooking, do it while gaming. I personally do it while fucking just FaceTiming my boys randomly. And it truly has helped me be a lot more calmer, letting out that stress, letting out that issue. And you know what? It is like doing a school project. Your teacher gave you a partner, do a school project. And the whole time you're wanting from your partner to do their part on the project. But where we go wrong, and many people, not necessarily men, even women, we go wrong is we always worry and we're like, is that person doing their part? They're not doing their part. They're not doing what I want them to do, but we also are not doing our part, right? As a guy, we don't share about our feelings. We don't talk about our feelings, but we want the girl to open up. Now, why will the girl open up when you don't open up? That's the stupidest thing, right? Like, would you do something for the other party knowing that you're never going to get that in return? Probably not. So why would the other party do that? Right? And to break the cycle, it must start with you, right? You must take the first step so other party does. Call up your boys, call up your friends, talk about what pissed you off, and then they will too. And with that comes depth. Every depth in any friendship, relationship, romance, whatever, shebang spongs, I don't really care. Any relationship requires depth, and depth comes from being vulnerable and opening up. And some of the greatest friendships, literally my friendship with my best friend Taylor, literally started off as me being pissed off and opening myself up while playing League of Legends. And here we are. So I want to leave that message. Just open up. It is not difficult. You don't have to talk about the traumas. That's not what this requires. And a lot of guys have that notion that opening up, I have to talk about my traumas. No, man, just talk about your day. What pissed you off? How's work? Don't do the it is what it is. Just rely on the boys and in hopes that they also open up, because you never know what somebody's going through. It might just be possible that your best friend is struggling to get out of bed and he just never told you because it is what it is. But you telling him that at work somebody pissed you off and you're pissed off and it makes you feel shitty the way your boss treated you might help him also return the vulnerability and rely on you. And next thing you know, you are now helping your friend feel better, be better, and making it easier for your friend to get out of bed. And that's what I want to leave you folks with. This episode was a little bit catered towards mental health, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Oftentimes I'd like making these episodes, the solo ones, the ones that are a bit serious toned. And I personally enjoy these episodes, even though they are very difficult to record. This episode, legit, I don't know how long it's going to turn out to be. This took me 3 hours to record because I can't get my words right. But sometimes some topics are important, and this being a closer one to me, where I realized that I was feeding into the cycle of being unemotional, that I became unemotional to my friends by just saying, I don't give a shit, or fucking allow it. So here I am. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed the previous episodes. And I hope I left you all with something to think about, something to reflect upon. The only thing I want you to take away from this is talking about emotions is not as daunting as it seemed to be. Sometimes it's just as simple as, dude, I'm pissed off and this should happen. Thank you very much for listening. And before I go, I just want to say, I am thinking of a new episode to make in the future where I want to answer some questions from my audience, but I also want to give advice to my audience. A lot of people have asked me questions over the years. People say I give good advice. So be on the lookout for a poll on my Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and even YouTube. Feel free to leave or text me any questions you may have, anything you may need advice on, whether it's something comedic, something romantic, something serious, or something unserious. Whatever it is, I'll deal with it on the future episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Core Life Chit Chat. I appreciate every single one of you. It's been lovely. Hasta la vista, folks.